In November 1932, a major in the Australian Army arrived in the desert with 2 machine guns, 10,000 rounds of ammunition, and a clear order: wipe out the emus. 6 weeks later, he withdrew without having done it, and newspapers around the world were laughing at him. This is the true story of the only war a modern army lost to a flock of birds. On the 2nd of November, the soldiers spotted about 50 emus near the town of Campion. They took position, aimed, and opened fire. The birds were too far away, and the moment the first shots rang out, they split into small groups and vanished into the scrub. Almost none of them fell. It may sound like a joke, but for the farmers of Western Australia, this was pure desperation. They were about to lose everything. Many of those farmers were veterans of the First World War. When they came home from the front, the government had handed them land in the interior to farm. Harsh, remote country that nobody else wanted to work. And then the Great Depression hit. Wheat prices collapsed. The government promised subsidies that never quite arrived, and those men found themselves growing a grain that was barely worth anything. That was exactly when the emus showed up. Around 20,000 birds finished their breeding season inland and began migrating toward the coast in search of water. And along the way, they found something that had never existed before: mile after mile of cleared wheat fields with clean water for the livestock. For the emus, those farms were paradise. Endless food, guaranteed water, and no predators. So they stopped migrating and settled in. The problem wasn't just what they ate. Pushing through the fences, the emus tore huge holes in the wire, and through those gaps came the rabbits, which finished off whatever was left. Desperate, the farmers sent a delegation to the capital, but they didn't go asking for money or poison. As the former soldiers they were, they asked for exactly what they knew how to use: machine guns. And the incredible part is that the defense minister, Sir George Pearce, said yes. He agreed to send troops on the condition that the farmers paid for the ammunition and housed the soldiers. The government also saw an opportunity. It would show rural voters that it was taking their problems seriously, so they sent a cameraman along to film the whole thing. The operation had to look good on the newsreels. In command was Major G.P.W. Meredith of the 7th Heavy Battery, with 2 men, 2 Lewis machine guns, and 10,000 rounds. On paper, more than enough firepower to deal with 20,000 birds. The operation was meant to begin in October, but the rains delayed everything. And those rains had an unexpected effect. They scattered the emus across a far wider area, exactly the opposite of what the soldiers needed. When they finally started, they discovered the first serious problem. Emus don't behave like a herd. At the first shot, the flock split into dozens of tiny groups running off in different directions, and each group seemed to have one large bird standing watch while the others fed. 2 days later, they tried something smarter. The farmers drove more than 1,000 emus toward a dam where the soldiers were waiting and hiding with the machine guns mounted. This time they had them in range and at close distance. They opened fire. About 12 birds went down, and then the machine gun jammed. While the soldiers wrestled with the weapon, the rest of the flock, nearly 1,000 animals, calmly disappeared over the horizon. And here is the key to the whole disaster. An adult emu stands nearly 6 feet tall, weighs around 100 pounds, and runs at 30 miles an hour while zigzagging. Its thick plumage absorbs impacts, and its body survives wounds that would kill another animal of the same size. The soldiers reported something that baffled them. Emus hit by several bullets that kept running as if nothing had happened for hundreds of yards before dropping. To actually bring one down, you had to hit the head or the heart on a target zigzagging at full speed. Meredith then had an idea that seemed brilliant. Mount a machine gun on the back of a truck and chase the birds across the plain at speed. It was an absolute disaster. The ground was so rough that the truck bounced constantly, and aiming from a moving vehicle was impossible. They never managed a single accurate shot. The only result was that an emu got tangled in the steering, and the truck ended up crashing into a fence. Meredith himself started describing the emus in military terms. He said they behaved like guerrillas, small units, leaders standing guard, orderly retreats. In his reports, birds with tiny brains were described as an enemy with tactics. By then, the Australian press had caught wind of the story. Newspapers ran mocking accounts of the army defeated by birds, and the whole thing reached Parliament. where the operation became a national joke. On the 8th of November, barely 6 days after it began, the government pulled the troops out. The official tally was damning: 2,500 rounds spent for a few hundred birds. But the farmers didn't give up. With the birds tearing through the crops again and a heat wave pushing more emus toward the farms, they asked for help once more. And on the 13th of November, Meredith returned to the field. The second campaign went somewhat better, around 100 birds a week. But when the operation finally ended on the 10th of December, the numbers were humiliating. 986 emus killed with 9,860 rounds, almost 10 bullets per bird. On his return, Meredith left behind a line that became famous. He said that if there were a military division able to take bullets like those birds, it could face any army in the world. He meant it completely seriously. The farmers requested military support again in 1934, in 1943, and in 1948. The government said no all 3 times. One public defeat had been enough. And the solution, when it came, was nothing heroic. In 1934, the government introduced a bounty system. Hunters were paid for every emu beak they turned in. In just 6 months, more than 57,000 bounties were paid out. What really solved the problem long-term was miles of exclusion fencing, designed specifically so emus couldn't get through. Boring, cheap, and effective, the exact opposite of machine guns. Today, the situation has completely reversed. The emu is a protected species in Australia, and it appears on the national coat of arms holding up the shield, alongside the kangaroo. And the final irony is that there are far more emus today than in 1932. It's estimated that between 500,000 and 700,000 live wild across the country. The difference is that nobody tries to solve it with gunfire anymore. It's managed with fences, permits, and regulated farms. Looking back, the failure has a fairly simple explanation. Machine guns were designed for human targets, grouped, predictable, advancing across a battlefield. The emus were the exact opposite: fast, scattered, unpredictable, and surprisingly tough. And although it sounds like an invented legend, all of this is documented. There are military reports, parliamentary records, newspaper accounts from the time, and even filmed footage of the operation. Historians have gone back to those documents again and again, precisely because the story sounds far too absurd to be true. Australians themselves named it the Great Emu War, and 90 years later it's still one of their favorite national stories. The time their army deployed machine guns against birds, and the birds won. If this story made you smile, subscribe to the channel for more true stories that sound impossible. Thanks for watching to the end.